Our speaker today is Dr. Stephen Arkin, who happens to be a staff neurologist with the St. Luke's Health System here in Kansas City. He is a graduate of the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, received his medical degree from Rush Medical College in Chicago, completed his internship at Northwestern University, and residency and fellowship with the University of Iowa. He likes to focus on neuromuscular disorders, stroke, migraines, concussion. So honored to have an expert in our presence. Let's give a really great warm welcome to doctors.
Change one thing. If I could change one thing about myself, one attribute that I could do without, it would be my perfectionism. Many may be confused by this statement. Is it your perfectionism that has brought you so far, that has pushed you to do your best? Yes, it is true. No matter how I wish it to be otherwise, I believe that my most self-destructive quality is also the soul of my being. While I may be brought to challenge myself due to my perfectionism, I would dispatch that quality if it meant that I could just relax. It's my perfectionism that moves me to act, that anything goes. Aim for the moon and you'll land in the stars, and for a while I followed that saying proudly. As time went on, I realized the flaw in my philosophy. To simply land in the stars was not my goal. My life depended on the fact that I reached the moon, or at least I acted as this were so. I needed to be perfect. This was my single purpose in life. Good was not enough. Great was not enough. Astonishing, not enough. Exemplary was not enough. I would only be appeased when I attained the rank of perfection. What would happen if I did not achieve my goal? I did not know, but in my perspective, I may as well never have lived. If I was not perfect, I brought myself down as far away from perfect as possible so as not to offend those who were perfect. Who was perfect? I did not know, but from my perspective, they may as well have been staring straight at me, mocking me, taunting me, being disappointed by my failure. It is sad this is how my mind works. I wish only that it worked through other more beneficial means. I wish only that I could relax. To tell the truth, I would choose a life of blissful ignorance over my present perfectionist lifestyle, only to have the ability to relax. I didn't write this. That's why I was reading it. 14-year-old boy wrote this in 2009. Okay? This boy, he was a tipped scholar from Duke. Spent 3 weeks in Davidson College in North Carolina and learned a little about architecture. He went on to high school and became a National Merit Scholar. He was in the top 1% of his class. He was an Eagle Scout. His favorite books were Atlas Shrugged and Ulysses. He read those during middle school. I tried to read Ulysses. I gave up after about 20 pages. All right. This was our son. Our son died by suicide on May 19th, 2015. My name's Steve Arkin. I'm a neurologist, as you've been told. My wife is a neurologist. We know a little bit about the brain. Notice I didn't say psychiatrist, I didn't say psychologist, I didn't say social worker. I don't talk about psychiatry very much. I talk about multiple sclerosis, I talk about ALS, I talk about migraines. I love to talk about stroke. People think I can talk about that in my sleep. Sometimes I do. But today, I'm going to talk a little bit about mental illness. I'm going to talk about the journey of my child through that. And I'd like to thank Cole Martin over here, who a couple months said, "Hey Steve, you want to talk a little about Jason in front of this group that I didn't know anything about?" And I said, "Hey, sure, Why not? You say, yeah, a few people show up, they're open-minded, free thinkers, like to discuss things. Yeah, that's my speed. That's my speed. I can do that. And throw a few notes together, talk about stigma. Yeah, I can do that. Let me take you back on a journey. First of all, it was fate that brought my wife and I together. I mean, I was in Iowa City, University of Iowa. She was in Texas, and we had a meeting in California. We didn't know each other. We met each other there. And that was in 1992. And we lived apart for a couple years, and we settled on Kansas City because her sister lived in Liberty, and it was only a 5-hour drive from Iowa City. That's doable, right? And we got married a little bit late in life. All right, so we started to get going, and so we started to start a family. And lo and behold, pregnancy started even before I got to Kansas City. And so I was driving back and forth. It's only a 5-hour drive. I can tell you every single entry point, exit point. My tank gets to halt, then I have to stop for gas. Then I can move on. 12 consecutive weeks during the end of her pregnancy so that I wouldn't miss it. Last Sunday, 12 weeks into it, I got home. Always I left at 9 o'clock just to make sure. Got home at 2 in the morning, got the call at 6 in the morning. Hey, I'm in labor. Fantastic, I haven't slept. But adrenaline, right? Got me through it, that drive. Got there, wasn't even in a room. What happened? Oh my gosh, she's on rounds. Sure, fantastic. She's not in labor anymore, but hey, I'm not going back to Iowa City without a kid being born, right? So, induce, right? So we got that going, and then by Tuesday, of course, we had Jason. Cool guy. Normal guy, right? I mean, into big trucks, into Pokemon, into penguins and dinosaurs, and yeah, a little bit interesting. He liked to read books a lot. He liked to create things like, we would get him Legos and, big things like the London Bridge or the Taj Mahal, and he'd get it done in the night. It's like, wait a second, when do you sleep? It's like, I'm like you, Dad, I don't sleep, which is fine. And everything was going pretty well. Let me tell you through his speech what he felt he was like, if I can find him. I am me. In all the world, there is no one else exactly like me. Everything that comes out of me is authentically me. Because I alone choose it. I own everything about me. My body, my feelings, my mouth, my voice, all my actions, whether they be to others or to myself. I own my own fantasies, my dreams, my hopes, my fears. I own all my triumphs, successes, all my failures and mistakes, because I own all of me. I can become intimately acquainted with me. By doing so, I can love me and be friendly with me in all my parts. I know there are aspects about myself that puzzle me, and other aspects that I do not know. But as long as I am friendly and loving to myself, I can courageously and hopefully look for solutions to the puzzles and for ways to find out more about me. However, I look and sound wherever I say and do, and whatever I think and feel at a given moment in time is authentically me. If later some parts of how I looked and felt out to be unfitting, I can discard that which is unfitting, keep the rest, and invent something new for which I discarded. I can see, hear, feel, think, say, and do. I have the tools to survive, to be close to others, to be productive, to make sense and order out of the world of people and things outside of me. I own me, and therefore I can engineer me. I am me. Things changed. When he was 12 years old, he went to a suicide prevention meeting at school. And he came out of that meeting and told my wife, I'm that guy. They were talking about somebody who died by suicide. That was a big change. And what we did is we decided to act. I mean, it's great that he was able to tell us that something was wrong. He probably had that in him for a year or two, as we figured out later. So we employed a bunch of people to help us out. We knew people who were in the business, right? And we were able to get a team of people to look into ways that we can address and treat the situation. And we went beyond what some people do. There's transcranial magnetic stimulation, relatively new, and the medicines didn't seem to be working. And that's what we experienced. Now, Jason, as I've told you, was a perfectionist, and he had some dreams, and he wanted to get into Northwestern, and he did. And during his first year at Northwestern, he got a little bit excited and a little bit anxious. He had the diagnosis of depression, probably some anxiety along with it. And during his first set of finals, he contacted their psychological services, and he told them that things were not going well. And they put him on a wait list. We weren't excited about that. When your kid is 18 years old, all of a sudden you don't have the ability to make appointments for them with a psychologist or psychiatrist, and he's there in Chicago, and we're here. They told him that he was too complicated to be seen by their services. Now, I will tell you, since that happened, since we talked to them a little bit, is they've added more people to their services, and there will be no more wait lists. But at the time, there was. And he wasn't the type to call or text and things like that, so he kind of lost contact with the services there. So they thought everything was just fine. And we go about 18 months later, and he is in trouble again, his second set of spring finals, and he contacts them. He's very proactive sometimes. And this time they contact us. And my wife and my daughter go out there, and he cannot be roused from his dorm room. He does not answer the phone, he doesn't answer the text. And so they did eventually get him, and he was in the dumps, okay? We pulled him out of school a week before finals, all right? And when he came home, he was able to go through an extensive psychological outpatient services 6 days a week, do the transcranial magnetic stimulation, and he popped up. And he popped up good. And he went back. He had missed those finals, remember? He went back and he aced those 2 finals. He had, at the end of his 3rd year, a 3.48 grade point average. Now, that's something in Northwestern Engineering because they don't have inflationary grades. All right? So, that means that half the people in your class, and now your class is filled with people in the 1 to 2% of their class, 1 to 2%. And what that means is you're competing with all these people who've never failed. And all of a sudden, 348. That works for me. It didn't work for him. So, he contacted the people at Northwestern, and they were able to talk to him, but they didn't talk to us. We knew something was wrong, of course, we'd be there in a second. And eventually we got him to talk to us a little bit and said, okay, you're going to call us on Friday and Sunday and we talked to him on May 15th. And on May 19th, we got the phone call from Evanston Hospital, Evanston, Illinois. Your kid had a seizure. Okay. Get on the road, fast as we can. We're driving along the road. Your son had a heart attack. Rhythm problems. We know all this stuff. We're talking to ER people, and they're basically coding him for an hour and 40 minutes. They got a pulse, they say, for about 15 seconds. We didn't get there. In fact, when my parents still live in Chicago, they were there. One of my colleagues was over there telling us what was going on. They said there's no chance. And we pulled over on the side of the road in Iowa City, ironically, where I was training back 25 years ago. And that's where I learned that my son had died. That there was no way that he could get back. That's the backdrop. What can we do about this? Well, when I talked to Cole, they said, well, these people like to talk. They like to discuss things. They like to be provoked a little bit. Let's provoke you. Transforming the stigma of mental illness. First of all, who are we working with? The National Institute of Mental Health says that all mental disorders, about a quarter of us, 75 of you, okay? Anxiety, 18%, depression, 9%, personality, 9%, eating disorders, 4%, schizophrenia, 1%. I got some more stats somewhere. "50% of all mental illness start before the age of 14. We have to start looking for, we have to start listening to our children. We have to encourage our children to talk. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in this country. 800,000 suicides in the world. That's one every 40 seconds in the United States, once every 13 minutes. 40,000, of which 90% of suicides have a diagnosis of mental illness. 36,000 per year. I did the math because I have statistics from University of Missouri, Kansas City, that tells me that 12.4 out of every 100,000 people in the United States commit suicide, die by suicide. Here, Jackson County, 15.9. Johnson County, 13.9. Wyandotte County, 13.5. These are numbers that translate into over 200 of us per year in this metro. 22 veterans die by suicide every single year. That's 20% of all suicides. Adults living with mental illness die 25 years earlier than people without mental illness. The question is, why? 40.3% of adolescents report an episode of mental illness every single year. They surveyed university students. Who do you contact about your mental illness? 67% of them said that they tell a friend first. Only 40% seek help or treatment. 30% say they're so depressed they can't even get out of bed. They can't function. 28% wait a year or more to tell anybody in their family. 8.5% have never told anybody in their family. The diagnosis of stigma is a marker, disgrace of infamy, a stain of reproach as one's reputation. So there's two different types of stigma. One is called social stigma, and that's what the non-sufferers do to the sufferers. It's prejudicial attitudes and discriminating behavior directed towards people as a result of psychiatric label. And what does that lead to? Self-stigmatization. What's that? It internalizes those beliefs into what the people are that suffer from mental illness, and they cannot get better as quickly as those that don't. It leads to shame. It leads to self-doubt. It makes them what they are now, and then they don't seek out help anymore because the helpers are being bad to them. In general, they surveyed a number of non-sufferers and said, "What would you do in these situations with somebody who suffered from mental illness?" 38% said they will not move next door to anybody with mental illness. 56% said they would not spend a social evening with them. 33% said they would not make friends with them. 58% said that they would not work closely with them in a professional environment. And 68% said they would not allow them to marry into their family. In the world, it's actually a little bit worse. In the UK, they can't be on jury service. They can't direct a company. In Lithuania, they can't own a home. These are laws in these countries. Japan, they can't enter a museum or a fitness center. They can't go in the swimming pool in Korea. And in some airlines in Asia, they cannot go onto an airplane without their psychiatrist. These are all true. On the books. So, what do people think? People with mental illness are dangerous and unpredictable. False. 95% of homicides are committed by people that do not carry a diagnosis of mental illness. 95%. Mental illness disorders are self-inflicted. They do it to themselves. That's not true. People with mental illness, there's a genetic predisposition. They get into a situation that the way they react to it is different than the other people that are not afflicted. That's how that works. They're not doing it to themselves. It's not a pity party. Get up and move. Buck up. Doesn't work. It's not part of their persona. People with mental disorders are hard to talk to. No. People who don't suffer from mental illness have difficulty talking to people because they're afraid to do so. They're afraid of what they might hear back. But what people with mental illness are waiting for is somebody to react and say, start the conversation, and you're going to figure out that you and I are very similar. That we have ideas, that we can think for ourselves, that we do not have to be put into a lesser situation because of what we are. And what happens is that once the stigma gets attached and it gets internalized, when people do not seek treatment, they continue to go down and then they can't do it anymore. 42% of people with mental illnesses that were surveyed said that they experienced stigma at least once per month. 58% say that that discrimination is more damaging, harder to deal with, than the illness itself. The fact that they're shunned. I'm a numbers person. I think you might have figured that out by now. 89% of people without mental illness believe that treatment can help sufferers of mental illness. 70% of sufferers do. That's pretty good numbers. In fact, 80% of people that truly get adequately treated do better, and some surveys say even up to 90%. 57% of non-sufferers believe that people are caring and sympathetic. These are the non-sufferers. The people that suffer say that number is 25%. People don't care. That is what they believe. So what does social stigma result in? Less opportunity for work. I can tell you from experience, one of the questions that we get asked when we re-credential, are you suffering from a mental illness, yes or no? What do they do with that information? You know what? I don't actually know. But I think it's pretty darn rude to ask the question. I don't think that anybody, just asking the question, puts a stigma on it, as far as I'm concerned. Trouble finding adequate housing in this country on that basis. Inability to live independently, losing your self-esteem. Once that happens, you feel that you are a burden on society. I'll tell you something about those two essays that I just read. Those were part of a project that was written during freshman year, Jason's high school, Blue Valley Northwestern. And they are writing this at the end of their first year, when he was 14 years old. All these I'm showing with you, even the ones to come up. And then, we didn't know this, it was our firstborn. We have a younger that's about a year and a half younger that's at North Carolina State in biomedical engineering, Jennifer. But he was supposed to share that with us. You know, that was the fun of it. See how you've grown over the last 4 years. And in fact, he might have been going over it one day because he was in the study and my wife went in and he said, "This is not for you. Get out of here. I am doing something private." You know, 18 years old, we're good with that. And then it probably turned out he was kind of reviewing things. He put it away. The only reason we know these exist is because as we were preparing for his funeral, 2 days afterwards, 5 days afterwards, that underneath his Eagle Project workbook was this stack of papers, his essays, kind of strewn. We found them. She came down, my wife, crying and saying, "Look what happened." So, and he talked about burden. He talked about, at the end, we actually hacked into his computer 2 months after the funeral. Found out he didn't have a very exciting password, I guess. But we found out that he felt that he had already exhausted all of the things that he could provide to society, and that he was a burden. He was a burden to society. That led to further self-stigmatization, hopelessness, helplessness. 60% of people do not seek medical care. 60% of people do not receive the services. There's a variety of reasons, but a lot of people don't because they're ashamed to do so. They don't know what's going to happen if they do. They have fear of finding out and label things, right? Crazy, nuts, psycho. What are we doing to these people? We're digging a hole deeper, literally. Where do people experience stigma? At school. People avoid the people that they don't like because they are, they act depressed, that type of thing. The professional environment, I already alluded to that. The family members, my gosh, can't go to family. They distrust, make assumptions. They think that the person with mental illness is trying to manipulate them to do different things. Avoidance, pity, gossip, all part of it. Coworkers socially reject people that have mental illness. They're no fun. We're not going to deal with them at all. Instead, they should. All right? Who knows? You may be able to help in their treatment. Even the healthcare system, this is where I get sort of upset. There's data that shows that when kids go to the pediatrician only asks about mental illness 29% of the time. We're guilty of it myself. I mean, if you're in a busy environment and you have to concentrate on their illnesses in your field, who is going to start talking about their mental illness until they bring it up? But we have to ask the question. We have to start the conversation. We have to be there for our patients. Misconception, common culture, portrayal of symptoms and consequences. Many people still believe that mental illness is rare. It's not. I showed you 25% of us have it, 40% adolescents have one episode per year. There's a belief that these illnesses, if they were real, people would be able to get up and move and get to work. But that's not the case. We have to treat first. We have to identify and treat, and then they'll be able to get to work. A belief that the people with bipolar, schizophrenia, are violent, out of control. You know who perpetuates that? The media, right? Law and Order. Life would be, the television programs would be really boring if you talked about the depressed person who was actually doing well and helping out in the community. No, they have to talk about the 5% that do bad things. Then that 5% in a person that has mental illness explodes into, this is general. And the people who don't suffer from mental illness think, you know what, if I see it on TV, it must be true. So they talk about it, they gossip about it, and they shun the people that they believe in mental, even if they don't know. I mean, if they show any characteristics of it that they learn from television, they will shun these people. Television reinforces 63% of references to mental illnesses in a negative way, and it impacts people. The belief that people with mental illnesses are weak or just lack willpower. Come on. You can do better than this. You're just sad. You're worried. People get through this. People with mental illness cannot understand that rationality. What you have to do is you have to dig deeper, try harder. So how do we beat it? Hard. We have to work at it. The people that have mental illness, the people that don't have mental illness have to get together and figure this all out. They have to socialize together. They have to go to mass participation events, go to walks, go to community events that enforce equality. Like you guys. That's why people invited me here, I think. Posts and blogs, TV ads, challenge these negative stereotypes. Don't let it become you. Don't take the easy way out. The majority sometimes is wrong. The majority sometimes doesn't get it. So be the active minority and turn this thing around. That's what needs to happen. Contact people, disclose. People with mental illness shouldn't be afraid to talk about their mental illness. Help people realize that there's no more shame to many mental illness than if they were to have a broken leg, if they were to have cancer. Things that you can see, that's easy. Darn it, he can't walk right now, he can't get to work. But people with mental illness can't get to work because they can't get out of bed because of the pain that's involved with their mental illness. Don't let stigma create self-doubt or shame. Don't equate yourself with your illness, supersede your illness. Talk to people. I think, I'm an idealist, I think that we can get this done if we start working against what's in the community as a whole right now and speak up, speak out. At universities, there's the Jed Foundation, Clinton Health Matters campus program that teaches life skills, time management, how to eat properly, nutrition. It works with university students to combat this type of mental illness in the most positive way and still be able to get their work done. Active Minds empowers students on campus to work peer-to-peer and talk to other people with mental illness. You can see what strategies can be used, and you invite the people who are non-mental illness sufferers to go with you. Bring Change to Mind, a national organization, the National Alliance of Mental Illness. We had a choice when Jason died. You see the obituaries, died of a sudden illness, died suddenly, that's it. 2 days after he died, we were writing his obituary, and we decided at that point that it was not our style, and it would not serve Jason right, and Jason would not have wanted his death to be in vain. So what we did is we pointed out that he died of his mental illness, that he died by suicide. And we are standing by that decision. And not only that, is that we have now started a foundation, the website will hopefully be up very soon, called Speak Up, with speakup.us, Suicide Prevention Education Awareness for Kids, United Partners. That means kids with mental illness become aware, educate themselves so they can speak to their friends about what is going on with them and to help them understand it and to stand up to those types of discriminations, those types of stereotypes that have been laid down before them. And we all have to gather and support that effort. We were involved with the WALK National Alliance Mental Illness last year. In Chicago, subsequently in Kansas City, about 1,000 of us walked, raised over $150,000. We're doing it again in October. This is all about education. We're going to bring people into our middle schools, our high schools, to talk to these kids about being aware and speaking up for what they are. I was told maybe I should put in some funny stuff, and I forgot it all. Sorry. And I hope that some of what I talked about is fairly provocative. And I thought I would let Jason talk one more time. Pressing problem today. There is a feeling of helplessness that is aroused by the recent death of someone your own age. This may be selfish, but so much of mourning is not for the purpose of mourning the dead, but to express this feeling of helplessness, to mourn for our own mortality. The problem is one that is out of our control. The solution is one that is beyond our imaginations. It is my hope that life in the near future will be free of such early death, to be cured by whatever means possible. It is my stand that at a very old age, a death should not be averted, so as not to leave the sick in a mortal pain. But if one is dying at a young age, we must save them no matter what the cost. If children are our future, then our future is dying before us. We must find cures. Thank you.
About 5 minutes per question, so sorry, it's going to be great. Please ask an actual question, keep it really short. Okay.
Hi, thank you for sharing with us. My question is, what do you know in terms of the brain of if someone has mental illness like depression, how that might be passed on to their children?
Right. So what we have learned is that there is strong genetics not only for depression and for other mental illnesses, but also suicidality. And there's a group at UMKC that's working strongly to try to figure out what representations, what symptoms are the most fatal. And it's now down to about 4 different genes, and hopefully we're going to have a test that will be able to identify those people so that they can get earlier interventions and treatments and aggressive treatments. What's interesting in a bad way is that people who commit or die by suicide, about 70% of them decide on that day. 25% decide within an hour. We have to identify those people as early as possible. Jason had what he called flashes of suicidality. And suicidal ideation, he said he would never, ever, ever act on it. That's what he told us. So we believe he's one of those 70%, if not one of those 25%.
Okay.
Hi, I was wondering, is there any way that we could get involved with your Speak Up Foundation? Are you taking volunteers or anything like
We're
that?
definitely taking volunteers. The website will be speakup.us. Actively trying to get the right content on it so that it's meaningful and that it tells people exactly what to do. We definitely would like some volunteers to work with us on our programs. We're going to have a walk on October 9th in Ironwoods and Leawood. And we're going to have it every single year until things happen. Thank you.
Any others? Oh, wow. Love hands.
You talked about some of the like bipolar and depression and so on. Is there any kind of idea concept that there might be other types of mental illness that aren't maybe as extremes, which are like in physical health, you have diabetes, you can also have a bruise. Most of us probably would have that bad day or we're sad for a little while. Is there any kind of like a spectrum idea concept in there?
Well, in most instances, is things that otherwise wouldn't be sad, people would have a bigger response to it. There are some people that are called dysthymic, and they kind of are on the edge of being depressed, that they are moody in a way. That they don't, there's certain criteria based on DSMs that which is our handbook of codes to diagnose people about what is entailed in each of them. Not being a psychiatrist, I couldn't really get into a major differential for you. But there are some people that are lower amounts, bipolar 1 versus bipolar 2, that type of thing. So there's various, and I encourage you to look into that and educate yourself so that you recognize the people around you if that thing is happening to them.
My question is, how do you encourage someone who has symptoms of some sort of mental illness to actually go get treatment?
The key to getting somebody to go to treatment is to legitimize their symptoms and to legitimize what's going on with them, and you have to work from that aspect first, is to identify with what they're saying and to not pass off what they're saying as just having a bad day or being sad, is that it's real. So when somebody gives you those types of symptoms, you empathize with them about what's happening, and you say, you know what, I've heard that people can get better from this, and you have to participate to do so. The alternative is to get worse. So that's how I would approach that.
We've had a personal experience with mental illness in our family. My wife's brother is schizophrenic, and he's in prison the second time right now because of his knowledge. So a lot of things we've dealt with in our family are holding them accountable for his actions while separating from the stigma. And because of things he's done, we don't allow him in our lives. So And when I went through nursing school, it was hard for me to work with mental illness, and I thought I would hate it, but I actually liked it because of our personal experience, and because, I mean, we hate it. It's like, I know she still feels like she loves him, but he's a scary person because of the things that he's done. How do you separate stigma while holding somebody accountable for their actions?
Wow. I mean, that's a very, it's a difficult question, and the key to treating people, you saw that it was only 1.1%, so these people are you know, we have to identify them as early as possible and get them on aggressive treatment as soon as possible. So like we talked about before, there's different formulations of different types of illnesses, some that are very difficult and that are aggressive, and the key there is to get them early. But one of the problems that we have is that once somebody gets into that rhythm of doing poorly, think they're going to do more poorly, and people around them may substantiate that discrimination, then we are in a little bit of trouble. So the key is getting to people as early as possible and to help those that can, and then hopefully participate in that treatment plan.
One more question, sorry, tight on time, so here we go.
Hi, thank you for your talk today. I really appreciate it. My best friend and cousin committed suicide when we were in high school, and after she died, I had a lot of family. I'm from a religious family who really glossed over her death in terms of like God's plan and that sort of thing. And it was incredibly frustrating for me to feel like that's not what this is about. This is about her mental illness. And I wondered if you experienced any of that after your son died.
Right, we were in that position as neurologists to play the what-if game. We were in a position to do a lot of things. What we came up with is that the person with mental illness is experiencing such incredible pain that none of the non-mental illness sufferers can even imagine. They talk to people that survive suicide, and they say the pain is worse than they can imagine from cancer. This is mental illness, and what happens to those folks, and what happened to Jason, is something where he thought that the better option was committing suicide. And that's so difficult for us to understand. It's so difficult for me to understand. You know, get mad at them? No. You understand that an illness got the best of them. Unfortunately, it got the best of them. And one of the studies that I actually looked at about adolescents, coping mechanisms to depression, major anxiety. One of the coping mechanisms that people wrote down that have mental illness is suicide. That is the saddest thing that I have found since I've been starting this journey myself.
Well, we really appreciate you speaking today and sharing your personal story and helping empower us to know, help reduce the stigma. So thank you so much. Warm welcome to Dr. Stigma.